Let's talk about the limitations of a one-point grid and things you might want to watch out for. So here's the horizon line, and what we have talked about is we want to build a one-point grid and we're building boxes into it, and our multiplication method will help us with this to multiply these into perspective. So we just covered the multiplication method, so the next step you want to do is actually build boxes. So when you have your first box, you will find that it usually works out just quite nice. But if you start adding more boxes outside here, they will start to look distorted. So let's talk about that distortion. There will be a cone of vision that we have looked at beforehand on page 27. And if you leave that cone of vision, you will get distortion. To prevent this distortion to be too strong, what we can do is, instead of just having the lines on the ground, these ones here, being perfectly parallel to the horizon line, we just can slightly tip them. So now they're actually moving towards a vanishing point on this side. We're going to do the same thing with this line, and then we can connect this out. So you see, it's actually not essential that we hit all the lines perfectly right away. These are lines that help me to orient my box. And then I'm finishing this box up. So the first thing you see here is actually that this line now has moved towards a vanishing point on this side. The question is why? Why could you actually do this? What we have here is actually a cheat on a curvilinear perspective. So a one-point perspective in truth is based on a curvilinear perspective. So this is the center of that curvilinear perspective, and I'm drawing the lines out here. So there are curved lines moving towards a vanishing point on this side. So I'm just going to pop in a curvilinear perspective grid so you can see this. Here's a curvilinear perspective grid. So what you have is, this is a line parallel to the horizon line. Here we have the horizon line, and they're all curving towards this side. So I'm moving these lines over towards this side. What you will see is, when we do this further, this line now aligns somewhat with that curvilinear grid. And that's basically the cheat. If we would just go ahead and just keep on sketching the lines parallel to the horizon line, you will see that the gap will become larger and larger towards what it actually was supposed to be. So that's sort of the first thing, where we actually have here our traditional one-point perspective. Here we have actually two vanishing points in that one-point perspective, and as you can guess, there will be actually 3-point coming out of this too, because if we move lower, so we have covered now this area, so we can now deal with this area with a minimum amount of distortion. Now if we drop lower, we are actually heading for a 3-point perspective. So our verticals start to actually tilt as well. And we're still having the 2-point, the vanishing point on this side, so I need to hit that. And I'm going to hit this. So even though all these boxes are aligning with one another, they're following different directions in the grid. So now we have a third vanishing point down here. And that is the same explanation as we had here. So our verticals are as well slowly curving. So all of these verticals are slowly curving towards their vanishing point as well. But the closer they are to the horizon line, the more vertical they look. So here we actually have 3 vanishing points in here. So to flip back in the grid here, this was going towards the side, towards the left and the right, and these are the verticals we're looking at. So the verticals are moving towards this direction. Again, if I'm having a vertical in this area, right in here, they're matching up really close with one another, so we can actually ignore this. But the further we're moving downwards here, the more we're actually moving away from the original 5-point perspective or curvilinear grid. So that's where you start to point with the verticals towards this vanishing point. And that will basically make a 3-point grid. Now we actually can expand the area even more where we can draw in. Now, which one of these should you actually be choosing? It really depends on your on your needs. So if you initially want to have, and you can actually stay in this area, 1 point with 1 vanishing point, perfect. So you can just quickly work in this. The next one is the 2 vanishing point when you need to actually move a little bit further out. And what we're talking here about is some of the gaming perspectives is happening here. And then the 3 vanishing points is as well somewhere in the gaming perspective. Now if you want to completely or try to be as natural as you possibly can, you want to have that curvilinear perspective, but usually in gaming engines that is really difficult to do and work with. To get more information on this, just check out Purchase 32, where we are actually drawing boxes, if I can spell it right, boxes in perspective. And on page 45, we will cover more grids. And there we really look at how to go in and build the grid that you have underneath your page, so you truly know where these vanishing points are, so you get a grid that points you in the correct direction. And you slip this underneath your page and work over this. So this is usually the best way to work with these grids, and you can actually make a 1-point, 2-point, or 3-point grid, whichever way you need to work with.
Okay, let's cover some multiplying techniques. So this is going to be one of the most used constructions in this book over and over and over again, is the way to multiply. So there's some very nice diagrams in the book, and I'm just going to demonstrate for you in sort of video form some of those constructions so you can see them step by step. So I'm just going to start out with a little 2-point perspective construction plane, and then we're going to divide it. So let's say that that's our proportion, and we want to take this dimension right here, and we want to repeat it into perspective. So what you need to do first is find the foreshortened center of that rectangle. So I'm going to do that to that. So corner to corner. So that's the foreshortened true center of that rectangle. Now what you do is you go from either this corner or the bottom corner through a midpoint up this far vertical. So we have the midpoint in the middle, but we need to transfer it over. So one of the ways you can do that is you just need to find a midway point between this. This is just 2-point perspective, so all my verticals are going to be parallel. So I could do that actually using my equal space divider, would be easy. Right? So if I just do this, okay, you can also use a ruler, but there's the exact middle between that line and that line on a vertical. You can also draw your vertical first. So go here, find my line parallel, go over here, lightly draw that line, divide it in half, and now connect it to the middle of our plane, which is there. Okay, and so there we've got the midpoint. Now if I draw from this corner, here, or from this corner through the midpoint of the far side, I'm going to get actually the exact same result. So let's see if that's the case. So here's the point on the bottom, here's the point on the top, and they line up. So these are the exact same dimension. Okay, but in perspective. So they're foreshortened. So this is auto foreshortening as it was described in the book, and this is the construction. And so you can just keep repeating. So the way that we like to do it a lot is to draw from the shorter line, especially when you start freehand drawing these. So if I draw from this corner through the midpoint to find the next one, right? This is a shorter line than this corner through the midpoint to find the next one. That's a much longer line. So this line is actually less accurate than this one. This one hits at an angle that's closer to like a 45, whereas this one's getting more tangent, right? Or sorry, parallel to this guideline. So when that happens, right, the sort of margin for error increases. So this is the one that we prefer to use, is the shorter line from corner through midpoint to find the next line. So first find my parallel and run it out, and there's the next one. And you can use this in any direction. So we could also go from here through here down to there. We could also go from here through this midpoint up. So if I want to bring this plane forward, just go from the bottom corner up through the middle up to the top, and find my parallel again, my vertical. There's the new vertical. So that's a really easy way to work. Now when you have all these guidelines, let's talk about just transferring some points. They're really easy to replicate. So if I see that this diagonal goes from this corner, and I treat this like it's going to be a center line, and we're going to mirror this construction over to here, right? Let's first just mirror it with the lines we already have. Well, we have an X across there, and we have that there. So let's just put an X over here. So I'm going to just draw an X. Like so. And let's see, I have a line going from this point through to the middle, so I'm going to draw it from that same point to the middle of the near side plane, like so. And what else do I need? Well, I have one going this way, so let's do the same on the other one. Like so. I've got another one from here to here. Now these are quite easy to mirror because, right, they're just points to points. They're just straight lines. So what am I missing? I've got this one, this one, this one, this one, that one, that one, that one, that one, this one, this one. I think that's all of them. So now let's do something like drawing a curve, like we're drawing a section just like we did in the book. And I'm going to draw a curve, and I'm going to start on the far side like this, and I'm going to draw through here, so something like that. It'd be a little easier if I spun this pad around, but I'm trying to keep it normal to the camera so it's a little easier to see. So if I want to mirror this curve, right, over to this plane, what I can do is I can just reference the points. So here's a point where it crosses, so there's a point. I already have that. If I need to do, let's see, this point crosses that diagonal, I could find that a couple of ways. I could try to draw a guideline going to my left vanishing point, and I could transfer it over, right? We could draw another box So if I wanted to, I could create a new plane like this. If I draw from this corner through the middle, it will give me the same dimension. And then I could go up, find my parallel line first, roll back, go up, and that's where it would cross that diagonal. So let's see, that one. Oh, am I missing that diagonal? Let's see. Now, it's okay to get lost because it will happen. Let's see, I have this diagonal. I want it to cross, sorry, it crosses there. And it's floating above. And sorry, it hits this diagonal, hits that diagonal. So just take your time, and there's my point. And tangent to this point. And then I can see this one at the bottom on the other side is just a little bit inside this one. So I just come over to this one and just go a little bit more distance, a little bit larger gap. That'll be the point. If you wanted to, you could take any of these diagonals. You could find more guidelines. If I wanted to find more guidelines, a really easy way to do that is just divide the back box here to find the foreshortened center and take the foreshortened center from the front, right? Because there's a X, so that gives me the true foreshortened center. Just connect those. And now we have another guideline. Okay, and you can keep doing that. So we could draw another X in this small box, find it. And that would be a really accurate way to add more guidelines. Right, another way, I could use my trusty equal space divider again and just divide it. Or I could use a ruler and divide it. And then I can draw another guideline going to my left vanishing point. Like this. Okay, and then I can look for some approximations and say, oh, well, it's a little bit above where it crosses that diagonal. So that's the diagonal going to the center. That's this one. And my curve crosses this guideline just a little bit inside or hits the diagonal just a little bit above. So either way, I can go a little bit above my guideline. That's where it's going to cross the diagonal. There's a point. So that helps me to draw the curve. So now let's draw the curve. And see, make sure it goes through those points. So yeah, the one place would be nice to have a little more help is maybe like right about in here. So I'm just going to be careful when I draw through there. But I know the first part is just leaving here, here, and then tangent. So this, in this case, I am going to spin the pad around. It's going to be much easier for me to draw this curve. So I'm going to start here, tangent, and then through that point, and then down to the ground. So that's basically the curve. Looks something like that. Okay, and that's the same as this one. And you see, it doesn't matter. I could be doing this view could be all drawn this direction as well, right? We're looking up at something. It doesn't matter which orientation. The construction stays the same. Okay, and then I'm going to come up out of here, tangent, and I've got to go through here, here, and then back over. And I can see, well, this gets pretty close. So now just freehand in a guideline and say, oh, it's just a little bit past that diagonal. So there's a little bit more help. Okay, and it's kind of straight through here. So if I say, well, that's kind of straight and it crosses my center line there, going through this point, that's even more help. So you can actually get very accurate with all these construction lines. All right, it just depends how important that curve is and how much time you have. So connect that. And now it's spin it around. Connect the last part of it. So it's going to run through this guy. And then it's got to start a curve. It's a nice full curve right through here. Tangent to the outside. And there we have it. That is how you multiply first to find foreshortened centers. You can do that in any direction. You can take any box size, find its foreshortened center, find its midpoint, pull it forward. Okay, this is something we'll start doing a lot with freehand sketching. So you're going to just do, for instance, and this is why it's important to practice those early skill sets of connecting points with straight lines, like that. And then let's run this line out a little bit. And then let's go from, let's run this, a new guideline out. There's the midpoint. And let's take, right, the short direction would be this way, so I'm going to go that way. So from that corner through the middle, up, there's my foreshortened distance. So I just took this point A, treat this as the center line, and then mirror that forward to find point A2, let's call it. And then if I was going to draw a parallel line freehand, what I want to do first is draw over this, find the parallel, then go here and try to draw my new extended foreshortened plane. So that's our extended foreshortened plane. And you can go, like you see in the book, you can go in any direction. So that's plotting a curve. It's plotting points instead of drawing boxes. But in the end, right, each one of these points could be a little box with a corner, right? So you can draw boxes, you can draw verticals, use X's, however you like. And in a way, you'll use a combination of all these: diagonals, X's, boxes, whatever you're comfortable with. But that's basically multiplying and mirroring in perspective. So that's another core skill that you want to master, that construction, because we're going to use it a lot in the coming chapters.